Hey everybody, it's Damien from Guitar Journey here, and today we're going to answer a simple but a sometimes tricky question. You know a scale, and maybe you know a few scales. The question is, what do you actually do with them? What do you do with a scale, or with however many scales you know? So maybe this is you, maybe you've been playing for a little while, maybe taking lessons, maybe trying to learn stuff online, from books, whatever. And you've learned a scale. Maybe it's the pentatonic scale. Maybe it's what some people refer to as the major scale. What next? How do you actually use your scale to make music? This is a huge generalization, okay? But let's just say that scales can sort of serve three different purposes. One, they're great technical exercises for both hands. They work our fretting hand dexterity and accuracy, they work our picking hand accuracy, and so forth, okay? And that's very important, but that's really not what we're concerned about today. The second general purpose of scales is that scales are building blocks for melodies. If you're trying to play a certain melody from a certain song, chances are it comes from one scale or another, okay? And that's important too, but that's not so much what we're concerned with today either. The third general purpose of the scale is that we use it to improvise. We use it to play guitar solos, okay? Scales give us the basic vocabulary, and we use that vocabulary to play musical phrases. They come together in a guitar lead or a guitar solo. But I totally recognize, just saying that isn't really very helpful, is it? Okay? The question is how to use your scale to begin assembling musical phrases. Now, in a nutshell, and this is sort of an oversimplification, but I really think it's correct. Good musical phrases consist of two things. One, we sort of emphasize a sweeter sounding note, or a series of sweeter sounding notes, okay? Notes that work well with the chords being played underneath it, okay? That's the first thing. And the second thing is we get to that sweeter sounding note in a musically interesting fashion. And so one of the most important things you can do to learn to use your scale is to develop your ear and train your ear to lead you to those sweeter sounding notes. Okay, I want to repeat that because it is super important. One of the most important things you can do to develop your ability to use a scale and to play cool guitar solos, guitar leads, improvisations, whatever you want to call it, you need to develop your ear. You need to develop your listening skills. There are all kinds of formulas out there. People will tell you, oh, you need to practice your triads. You should try to land on the third of a given chord, whatever. And as I've said before on this channel, none of those ideas are wrong. But for one thing, they're very limiting. And for another thing, they're actually kind of hard to apply. It's actually kind of ironic when you think about it. When you're starting out and you're looking for help with getting started soloing, you're not ready to begin thinking in terms of triads or formulas like that, Doing that requires at least a little bit of knowledge of music theory and an equal amount of knowledge of your fretboard, where the notes are on your neck. And that's tricky when you're first starting out. And honestly, by the time you're far enough along in your journey that you do know those things and you do have that knowledge, you probably don't need to be thinking in those terms. You've developed enough as a player, hopefully anyways, that you can let your ear guide your playing. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to skip the formulas and get right to focusing on your ear. And honestly, what I want you to do to get started is really quite simple. Put on a backing track. Millions of them on YouTube, and from other sources as well. There are some pretty cool backing tracks here on the Guitar Journey channel, by the way. And after each of those backing tracks here on the channel, I explain to you what specific scales you can use with a certain jam track, and I even demonstrate the scale in the event you happen not to know it. But setting that aside, a little bit of self-promotion, setting that aside, just find a backing track, okay? Doesn't matter from where. Find a backing track that you enjoy. And really, it's this simple. You're going to play your scale over it, whatever the scale happens to be. I recommend you start with a nice, simple pentatonic minor scale like this one here, okay? Just that. And the only thing you need to make sure of that your pentatonic scale, if that's what you're using, whatever scale it is in the same key as the backing track, okay? I'm doing my pentatonic minor scale right here at the 5th fret with the root note, what we call the root note of the scale, on an A note right here on the 5th fret of the 6th string, okay? So this is A minor pentatonic, and this scale at this place on the fretboard will work with an A minor backing track, okay? There's more you can do, of course, in terms of playing in different keys and all that, but let's just keep it simple, okay? Now, you're going to play your scale over the backing track. You can play it straight through, from the low note to the high note like I just did, and then backwards from the high note down to the low note. That kind of thing. Or you can skip around the scale, kind of, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but kind of hitting notes at random, you know, maybe that kind of thing, you know. It's really up to you, whichever you're more comfortable with to get started. But I can't emphasize this enough. There are two things you have to do while you're engaging in this practice. One, you have to play very, very slowly. I just demonstrated this stuff really quickly because I don't want this video to run too long. But you must play very slowly. And the second thing is you must listen. And what you're listening for is just whether or not you like the sound of a given note over a given chord. And it doesn't matter if you don't know the name of the note or if you don't know the name of the chord that's being played. The bottom line, you're learning to listen for which notes sound a little bit sweeter than other notes in a given setting. As long as you're playing the scale that is correct for the key of the backing track, like I said earlier, you're really not going to hit any wrong notes. You're really not, okay? And what you want to do is just listen for the notes that might sound a little bit sweeter than others in certain places. That's the magic of soloing in a sense. Keep in mind, the notes that are going to sound really great, those notes will change as the chords themselves change. A note that sounds great over one chord might not sound quite as good over another chord. So as you do this exercise, you're training your ear to hear the notes that are going to be sweet. And then you're listening for some different notes, looking for some different notes as the chords change, okay? That's why you have to go slowly. You have to really listen to each individual note. Go super slow. Now, if you do this consistently, then eventually you're going to be able to sort of anticipate which notes are going to be the sweeter notes. You're going to be able to anticipate that a given note will work with a given chord. And just to be clear, please understand that this instinct, this sort of intuitive awareness, is something that's going to be happening for you in tenths of a second, you know? You're not going to be sitting there deliberating, analyzing, thinking, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe I should go to this note, maybe I should go to that. If you do this practice that I'm suggesting for you today enough, you'll know it almost instantaneously, and you'll be able to flow in a given musical situation in a very natural way. And you won't have to be thinking in terms of formulas or anything like that. You'll sort of develop a sixth sense that if you go to this note at this point in the chord sequence, then that's going to sound really nice, okay? So again, you need to go really slow with this at first to really listen, okay? So again, just put on a backing track, get in the correct scale position, and play very, very slowly so that you can really focus, really listen, and really ask yourself if you like the sound of a given note with a given chord or not. Once you start to develop this sort of sixth sense, you can start to work a little bit more on getting to that sweeter note in a more musically interesting way. A musically interesting way. What does that actually mean? Here's an easy example, okay? Let's say I have a certain feeling just on the fly, okay? A certain feeling that this A note right here on the 4th string at the 7th fret is going to sound really, really nice with the chord that's about to be played. Okay, now let's keep in mind this is all happening at warp speed. In a split second. I'm not analyzing anything to do with this. I'm not saying, well, this note is going to be the major third of the F chord that's about to be played. I'm not thinking that. It's an instinct. No real analysis, but my imagination, my innate musicality, so to speak, my ear tells me that this note is going to sound really nice. Now, I can get to that note in a really straightforward way. Maybe I just do something as simple as this. Okay? That's fine. I got to my target note, okay? It works fine, but it's not all that interesting. I'm just going straight down the pentatonic scale to get to my target note. I just started at that high C note there, and I went straight down the scale. Just like that. Well, what else could I have done to make it just a little bit more interesting? Maybe I could have gone... I got to the same note. I arrived at the same target note. And in each case, I pretty much started at the top end of the scale, that high C, and worked my way down from there. But I would suggest that the second way that I did it was a little bit more musically interesting than the first way. Okay? And that's what we want to make happen. Get to our target note, get there in a musically interesting fashion. Maybe one more quick example. Let's say I'm targeting this C note right here, 5th fret of the 3rd string, okay? And again, there's no analysis there in that singular moment, that singular moment in time. Just a fraction of a second, I have a sense that that note is going to work nicely. So maybe I get to the C note a little bit like this. Maybe I go, okay, again. And that sounded fine. A little bit stilted sounding, but pretty good. Not really that bad. But maybe I can do a little bit more. Maybe I can make it a tiny bit more interesting. Maybe I'll get to that same C note a little bit like this. Again. The two licks that I just played are almost the same lick. The second one is more expressive, though, than the first. But in each case, we landed at that same target note, that C note there, okay? The topic of how to get to a target note in a musically interesting fashion, the whole topic of phrasing is an incredibly deep topic. I mean, entire books are written about this. But just a couple of ideas. You can do things like, instead of playing straight down the scale, maybe you go down a few notes, then back up one note, then down a few more notes, then back up another note, that kind of thing. That kind of thing. You can vary the rhythm. Instead of playing just straight quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, or straight eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3, and you can vary the rhythm a little bit. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 that kind of thing, Of course, we have expressive techniques as well. Bends, slides, hammer-ons and pull-offs, heavy vibrato, and so forth. And all of these different things blended together allow you to get to your target note in a musically interesting fashion. But the key to all of this is to develop your ear. And the simple listening exercise I gave you today will help you get started doing just that, okay? All right, that's what I have for you today. If you enjoyed today's content, please hit the like button, and also please hit the subscribe button. We've got a ton of content here on the Guitar Journey channel, and there's new content coming all the time. So hit like, hit subscribe, and by the way, please make sure your notifications are turned on. That's the little bell that's up there in the top corner, I think right up there, okay? The little bell, make sure that your notifications are on so that you'll know that whenever new content is released, okay? Also, if you would like to, please leave me a comment as well. I love hearing from you. And I really believe that we are building a musical community here. I'm serious when I say that. We can all exchange ideas and we can all learn from each other. So one last time, hit like, hit subscribe. Please feel free to leave me a comment. And really, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.